A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for joining our Homeopathy 24/7 podcast. We are going to be speaking to an array of international guests who will share their knowledge and experiences of homeopathy with you. We will discuss all types of subjects such as remedies, symptoms, and stories of health. No matter where you are with your homeopathic journey, we aim to inspire you on your quest to natural health and living. The podcast is brought to you by Mary Greensmith, the founder of Homeopathy 24/7, which is a global platform connecting you with a homeopath wherever you are in the world, 24 hours a day. So let's get started with today's chat. Please welcome Mary Greensmith.
Hello everybody, it's so lovely that you can join us today. We are really pleased to have Ali Lomax with us. Ali is one of our homeopaths on the Homeopathy 24/7 team, and you have been practicing for a while, Ali. Tell us a little bit about your homeopathic journey.
Hi there, Mary. Hi, everyone. Yes, I finished my 4-year course in 2013. I took a break for a year and then I got cracking. I've been working mainly part-time since, because I've been dealing with my parents for many years. That's all starting to ease off. So now I'm getting excited about having more time. I've raised a family. And yeah, I mean, I do love it. I was drawn to it because I worked with children. That was my real forte, with children with behavior problems, with special needs, and really the family too, the whole scenario, because I could see the stress that the families were under. And I saw a lot of grief through that, coming to terms with things. But I could just see the gaps. I was working with multidisciplinary teams, with physios, with psychologists, with neurosurgeons, but there was just still a gap. Progress was made, but I just really sensed that gap. And I felt for the families, because many families could see that things were moving, but I just wanted there to be more clarity in the individual cases. So that stayed with me. And I found then that my work has also really embellished in working with women on their journey. And grief has come up quite a bit with many of my patients. I think it does. I think it's an amazing, huge topic, and it doesn't just come up at the time of grief. So I found that a lot of patients have come to me, and down the line, they said, "Oh, I've got this not right. I'm not sleeping," or "Now I've got real difficulty with my liver," or "My chest isn't good." And when we've actually sat down in the appointment with the time to talk and go through a timeline, here we are, the grief has come up. And, you know, homeopathy has always known and understood grief. There's a lot of help out there now. Counselling is a big thing. Grief therapy is a big thing. It's available. Lots has been done. And a lot of that was, I think, the pioneering work of this amazing Swiss-American psychologist called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who really wanted to understand the grief from the aspect of the patient that was dying and what they were going through. But it came up that there was a need for both sides, and she understood the stages of grief. So people may have heard of the 5 stages. Now they say there's 7 stages. And that was a very helpful tool to use alongside, because in homeopathy, we understand grief, and with the appointments and the work, we go through the stages naturally. We help the patient understand how it's playing out for them. And we recognize that it's different for every person, and it comes out in different ways. So I tend to use a lot of the reference to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross to help my patients really understand a bit more about it. And I throw in some tools, journaling, the use of a memory jar where they can actually start to remember things and store them in a jar. It's a place to go, especially when they're starting to realize with time they're forgetting important parts of that person just from the lack of them being around, and the worry and the anxiety that gives. That's a very healing thing. And just the use of talking therapies. But of course, homeopathy has that talking therapy naturally within it, without it being thought of to be something terrifying that you've got to let it all out, you've got to expose yourself. And for some people, talking is way too much. So in by working with a homeopath, you just naturally go through that process, and it works. It's tailored very much to that patient in that moment and where they're at. So I think that was really what I love about working with grief patients, because homeopathy just helps it along so much.
It's quite amazing, isn't it, that people come to us for all sorts of other things, and actually it's not until we sit down with them and actually find out what they're holding that the grief picture emerges. And I think that's not only useful for us, but also for them, isn't it? So that they realise that it is so close to the surface. Even, if it might have been a few years or many years since they had a loss. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a loss of a person, does it?
And a very, very common symptom or theme that we work around is just that understanding of unshed tears. Patients are often really worried about starting to cry again because they can't see an end to it, and that will make them unable to work, incapacitated to be in a relationship, looking after their family. They can't comprehend how, if they let those tears start rolling again, or for the first time properly, they'll stop. So and of course with homeopathy, being able to help the patient understand that's a normal part, that the tears are there for a reason. We were built to cry, and the body will let out and stop when it needs, if we can go with it. Obviously the remedies can help support that. So I always tell the story of Ignatia, where that is a remedy in particular. I mean, there are many remedies, but this is a particular one for someone that might be needing to go to that funeral and say some words, or hold it together, or just be present enough to be part of it in the way they want and they think they should be. And Ignatia will just hold them, as do the remedies. They just will hold you through whatever you're going through. So I love that. I love that part of it.
What I love about Ignatia is that quite often after a recent grief, it obviously doesn't stop the grief, but what it does is makes the grief less overwhelming, so you're able to get through day by day. And obviously this is really, really important when there has been a recent grief, because you do need to still be looking after the children, or going about other things that you have to be doing. And grief can be so overwhelming that nothing is possible. And that is the beauty of homeopathy. If it can just help everything be less overwhelming so that you can get through to the next stage. So we are talking about a type of medicine here that can help from very, very recent grief to very old grief, and even grief through the generations, would you say?
Absolutely. We can carry. I mean, I have a couple of cases that are I'm aware of that were lung pictures. The chest was not good. And one particular client came to me at the beginning of COVID because her chest was really playing up and she was worried, but she was carrying a lot of grief from generations, and she was beginning to understand it. So it was coming up for her. So I was supporting her through COVID, primarily with lung remedies, but with grief remedies too, because it was important to let her keep bringing up and letting out what was there to leave, to move on. And that was important because she wouldn't have made that connection until we sat and talked homeopathy. And I just think the hope that homeopathy brings is amazing, because to be able to sit down with someone and help and give them remedy and let them see the fact that they can, to recognise where they're at, and B, to see there might be a path forward, step by step, with the support on the way of the remedies and that connection with someone who's independent, who's not a family member, who's not there to judge or to be emotionally involved, but to be aware of the whole picture. And I think that's wonderful. And she's actually a friend, but I was treating her homeopathically. She lost her husband, had a child with special needs, and a 4-year-old child with special needs, and a 7-year-old. And her husband was a pharmacist, and they knew he was going to die within a few weeks, and she was very tearful. And he said, look, I'm a pharmacist, go to the chemist and get yourself put on some antidepressants, because they will stop the tears, they will help you. And she thought, okay, fine, solution. And she did that, and it worked temporarily, and then he died, and no one ever questioned. And she carried on taking those antidepressants for 7 years. No, maybe 11. It was shocking. It was a huge number of years, because no one said, right, we need to see you. How are you doing? And although she felt that she was trapped in a bubble, it got her going, but it numbed her emotion. And she knew there was something not right, but life was carrying on, and she was functioning as a parent. And then eventually she got but she used to feel on her ankle a little fuzzing feeling every now and again, and she used to think, oh, that's a bit weird. One day she woke up and it was really strong that day, and there was a little mole there. Anyway, a week later she woke up, and that it was more of a burning feeling, and the mole had grown considerably in a very short space, and it was actually skin cancer. And she got it looked at, and she had begun learning about homeopathy. I was working with her, and she just said, this is where my grief is. This is my grief. It's been talking to me, and I haven't been letting it out, and now it's bursting. And that was a fantastic realization, because she then was able to come off the antidepressant and face the world, as scary as it was, but she found the remedies very supportive. And she's actually even written a book. She's written a book. It's available in Waterstones. It's called Widowed with Kids. Her name is Sharon Rosenblum, and her passion now is to let people know, don't suppress. And there are all ways of not suppressing, but homeopathy is one of her big important things. But I did love that, because it was a little she was getting some message all along in her ankle, every now and again, on a regular basis, that was saying, we're not done, we need to come out. So if we can learn to tune into our bodies, and then trust our bodies and follow a process with support, homeopathy is amazing, because it doesn't suppress it, and it won't create further ill health later on.
It's amazing that she just hit the nail on the head for me, in that grief does all sorts of physical things to your body, and we see it physically, don't we, in so many different ways. So somebody will come to us with eczema, or with something that has happened since a grief, and we know that, okay, let's have a look at the journey since that trauma, because that's what grief is, isn't it? I am so interested in what you're saying about the hope of the future as well, because homeopathy is so special, isn't it? About allowing such a gentle healing that takes you on into the next phase of your life.
And I have another case where a patient came to me. Her youngest was about 7, so she had lost. He was the youngest of 3 surviving children. The first baby had died a month old, beautiful born baby, actually had some major congenital disc things. So he lasted a month looking perfect, but then he died very quickly and very suddenly, and it was a huge shock. She dealt with it. She did a lot of work. She was aware. She processed as best she could. But 7 years down the line, she was not feeling great. Her symptom was this wretched throat clearing, this horrendous post-nasal catarrh, these headaches, and just this whole aggravation. And in fact, she even grew some little nodules on her voice box, and singing was her lovely thing, and she was struggling to sing. So we sat down, and of course, before too long, the grief picture came up. But being a functioning mum and holding it together with these 3 kids and realizing she was obviously, okay, I'm back in a spell of grieving. I understand it will come in waves, and that's okay. But she was desperate. So I prescribed for her, and I was reassuring her that homeopathy will support you with what you can deal with best. The right prescription in the right way will meet you where you're at and take you through. And we met up again 6 weeks later, and I said, how you been? She said, well, no cough, that's really good. Much less catarrh, that's great. No headaches, blah, blah, all positive. I said, okay, so anything else? No, that's fine. So I went through a few little things, how's your digestion? We've done the catarrh, how are your periods? How's your mood? We got to sleep. Oh, she said, I've had some really, well, I said, what about dreams? She said, yeah, well, I'm sleeping okay, but whew, I wake up feeling quite exhausted. It's like I've had these dreams. They're very vivid. I can't really remember them all, but they are, one was when I was having to keep an eye on all the children. We were walking with a picnic by a stream, and I had to keep checking if they were falling in. And the other one was head counting children again. We were somewhere, and did we have the right number of children? And the other one was, was there going to be an accident when we were cooking in the kitchen or something? She was, really, I woke up feeling, well, I've slept really well, but whew, that was a busy night. So we called it busy nights. And that was how she was processing that grief. And there obviously was for her this element of responsibility. Did I do everything I could for my baby? Am I okay? Is everything going to be okay? And the reassurance she then gained, and she was able to recognize she was in another cycle of grief, but she could go through it. And I see her still fairly regularly, because things come up, and they're nearly always physical, and they go back often to the sinus picture or the clearing of the throat. They've also gone into the menstruation, the hormone balance and she's had very regular remedies. I was actually looking at her notes earlier. There's 2 or 3 remedies that are really, really helpful for her. And it's just, help. She's able to move through and stay strong as she needs, but able to talk about it, able to realize where she's at and have empathy with herself, and not feel bad, not feel that she's not coping, feel that, she has that hope. And her interpretation is, right, okay, I need to come and see Ali, I need to come and get myself sorted out. I'm going a bit. Let's just, So it's quite matter of fact. And I think, she was someone that could have gone on antidepressants, but she realized it wouldn't solve it for her. That's right. And I think that's the big thing. Antidepressants are given out so readily, and antipsychotics actually. They do hold a space if you're really needing to cope. They do, but if there is not that knowledge of what they might be actually holding within, and that perhaps they're not letting you actually process that grief, it's not helpful long term. So I think it's lovely that homeopathy can offer that. We can also work with patients who come on medication, conventional medication, and with time and understanding, it's often the case that patients go, right, I can now see this is helping me on many levels. But a lot of the patients talk about this, we're in this sort of bubble, everything's a bit sort of fuzzy, and it's quite. One patient said, I actually don't want to come out of this happy place because it's a happy, but I know it's a false happy. So, we can work with that. But yes, my case is there's nearly always something physical.
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it, how the body, and what's lovely about homeopathy, of course, is that you get to know your body and your symptoms much better, and you learn what the symptoms are actually meaning, and it allows you to be a little bit more in touch with your body. And your first client that you were explaining about that skin cancer, this is where I'm holding my grief. It's that intuition, isn't it?
I think it is. And we talk about grief, we kind of presume it's someone has died, but actually, I have a lot of grief. I had a patient last year who was self-harming, because when we really got to the root, and we worked with her mother a bit as well, was the grief of a very bad breakup in her parents' relationship, where her needs were not understood or met, and she didn't have a voice, and she didn't find her voice, and she couldn't express it, and so she was holding in all this grief, and the only way she could relieve that pain it was causing her was to cut herself. And she was aware of what she was doing, and we got to the point where she could understand it was a coping technique, but we needed to go back and work with the grief, with some remedies for that and the way it was affecting her. And I had another patient, who came to me on antipsychotics and antidepressants, because she had gone into a major depression, quite a psychotic state at one point, as her baby was about to be born, her second baby. And we worked together, and it came out quite quickly that she was actually very affected by the way she'd been treated by her mother-in-law, where in that culture they live with their mother-in-law, and her husband had left to go and work away from home, so it was literally her, and she was made to feel absolutely worthless. And then being a mother herself, it was too much. So the response was huge in her emotional upheaval, that she was hospitalized, she was put on medication, but luckily for her, deep down she knew this is not what she wanted. And we worked on, she was a strong cookie, because she had this inner knowledge, but we worked with it, and she made the decision herself to come off them. And wow, she amazed me, so it's something she still works with to a degree. And I think this is a thing, but she's okay. And she knows, as you said, Mary, she knows that there is the hope.
Yes, yeah.
It doesn't.
There is another way.
As bad as this. And she also knows very much, if she had gone down that route, that it wouldn't have been helpful for her in the long run. So I love this aspect of hope.
Perfect. And of course, that's why we're here today, really, to help people understand that there is a choice. The homeopathic choice is a brilliant choice for a lot of different things, and it's about giving people hope for a change in whatever it is that they need to change, isn't it?
Yeah. I think another area that I do a lot of work in is working with women, and as they come into their different stages in life, whether it be starting a relationship, or becoming a parent, or ending their menstrual cycle, grief can come up because they're moving from one stage to the next. And they wouldn't, and many of us wouldn't initially think, well, where's there a grief in that? But again, it's when you work with that patient and help them understand what might be going on, they do start to connect. The remedies really help them.
Yeah,
they can then see what was that and what is now, and see a way forward, and let go of the thing they're hanging on to that is not relevant now. So I think grief covers so many areas, and it helps. Homeopathy helps us do the letting go that we need to let go of sometimes.
Yes, and then of course moving on to the next part, the next phase in your life. It's been so lovely talking to you, Ali. We've brought up some really, really important points here. And I think there's actually a lot more for us to be exploring on this level, on what is happening, on what actually the remedies are helping you achieve, on opening the picture, on the gentleness of homeopathy, going at your speed, not re-traumatizing at all, and seeing what it can do and how it can help a lot of people through, at some stage through their life.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you so much. Lovely.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.
I hope you found this week useful. Talking to Ali about grief, hope, and homeopathy has been a real eye-opener, hasn't it? Next week, we're going to be talking to Dr. Philip Bailey. He has written quite a few books. We're going to be talking about the lack remedies, about psychology with homeopathy, and about using homeopathy with mainstream medicine as well. So lots there for you. I look forward to seeing you next week.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and look forward to listening to our next one. Please don't forget to follow our podcast on your chosen channel, and please do leave us a review so we can continue to share homeopathy with as many people as possible. If you do have any questions, please do reach out to us on any of our social platforms mentioned in the show notes. We at Homeopathy 24/7 hope to empower you on your natural health journey.